Welcome, everyone. I'm Alan Palmer. This is something I never thought would happen, and here it is happening, and we're just about to end the series. I've learned so much. I hope that you have been able to learn a few things as well, maybe some surprises. Yes, Monyō, I thought this would be rather simple and tie everything together. Well, I don't make anything simple. And that's, I guess, why I am doing what I'm doing and have been for almost 50 years now. And Monyō, I thought it was a familiar phrase, but maybe it's familiar only to me and some Japanese, but design elements, mon. Really, I keep saying this, and I mean it absolutely, that I'm learning all the time. And I didn't know that, well, so clearly that a mon is synonymous with a coin. And old coinage in Japan, the mon was like a penny. And there were 1,000 mon to a kan. Right, there's our kanji for mon. And there's a mon, the coin. And those of you who have been with me for a while in these lectures know that I measure everything, or at least I think I've measured everything. And this turns out to be the coin, the mon, turns out to be hachibu. That's why I've got the shaku there. That's the monosashi for kanejaku. And they used to line up these coins to measure the size of your foot. So it was used kind of like an inch. The coin that I have, that's a picture of it. On the back is a beautiful little pattern. I knew I was going to want to show this to you. And maybe, yeah, I think maybe you could see it. There's a little wave pattern. And I thought, well, isn't that pretty? Well, the number of waves is the value of the coin, and that's worth 4 mon. At least it was that in 1768. That's another way that they can date the coin. So back to our slide. So that's a mon. It also means literary. Fumizuki, the 7th month of the old calendar, is letter writing, because you wrote letters or poems, love messages to the star lovers, the cow herd and the weaver princess. Yes, so our next mon is the mon at the top there, that top one. That is the family crest. That, if you're Japanese, or if you're fortunate and have been given the permission to wear a family crest, as I do, I can wear the Sen family crest of the tsubo little jars. And that's that crest. And you can see that the part of the kanji on the left is thread, which implies cloth, and then mon, which means, 27 different things. And below that, 2 characters. On the left, that's Monyō, and that is a design of a lamp or a chawan or that. But the Monyō on the right, same pronunciation, and that is related to the family crest. Very complicated. Yes, it's very complicated. I also had this wonderful little bit of information that the character for mon, which looks like a cross under a pot lid, that was actually in China a character of a man with his arms spread out and a tattoo on his chest. So this character, once upon a time, had something to do with tattoos. Well, today is the actual death day of Sotan, Riku's grandson. And that's a complicated issue too, which we won't go into. So in the Genkan, when people enter a Japanese house, they enter through a Genkan if they're lucky enough. And sometimes it can be as big as a phone booth, or it can be a fairly large room. And there often is something beautiful there. So if we could see the bucket, and the bucket in a Japanese house that had flowers available to them might have this as a kind of decoration in the Genkan of a place that maybe on a shelf, but something beautiful. And the reason that I have this here is because it has in part one of the most famous decorations of Sotan, Sen Sotan, Rikyu's grandson. And his design was a raft, and you can see right in the lower part, sort of a gold and orange raft with cherry blossoms. And that was Sotan's design for a robuchi, the frame of the hearth, hana ikada. This also has maple leaves as well on the stream. Stream motif is just everywhere in Japanese design. It's probably a river. If there's eddies in it, it looks like a river. Kyoto has one of the great rivers. Kani Kimos, dear friend of many years, and I occasionally would have a walk along the Kamogawa. The Kamogawa. So much a part of Kyoto culture. But Sotan had one of the very limited designs. You know, we think about, well, is this seasonal enough? Is this appropriate for the season? If you look through catalogs of Rikyu's choices, there's almost no design elements. Urasenke, if you're strong enough and can last through the week of intensive study, you will be given a kobuksa. And this kobuksa is the, I always want to say a prize. This is the omiyage, the souvenir of that week-long study. And this design is called Rikubai or Rikyu Don'ts. And that's one of the few designs that we really know are connected to Rikyu. Most of his chadogu, his utensils, are just the object itself. However, he did have natsumes that have the kiri mon, the Paulownia mon, which is one of the crests of the imperial family, or a chrysanthemum, which I think most people recognize as one of the emblems of the emperor. The 16-petal mon of the emperor could not be duplicated by anyone. Moving along to a fan, we're now in the machiai. Sorry, we're in the yoritsuke. Sorry, there's lots of rooms to go to. I had my first apartment in Kyoto had a yojohan, a sanjo, and a naga ichijo han for the rest of the apartment. I loved it, absolutely loved it. It had a little garden too, and I asked the owner if I could make a row in the floor. It was not equipped with that. So everything happened at once. So in the yoritsuke, where you would change your apparel, do something maybe with your tabi, and I wanted to have something really gorgeous. And this is really gorgeous. The dance fan. This would be a dance fan. I was watching some No dramas recently. And even in that quiet, well, often quiet, but can get rather noisy and exciting, the lead actor often is carrying a fan. It can mean anything that they want. In Matsukaze, Matsukaze is a woman, and her sister, Murasame, they are salt gatherers, big profession, salt gatherers, and they use the fan as a shovel. You have to have in your mind what is happening, but absolutely ravishing fan. And if you were with me last time or the time before, you know that I measure everything, and lo and behold, there's that sensu folded up, and the kanejaku is on top, and the kujira jaku is on the bottom. And regardless of the actual measurement, the paper and the handle end relate to each other 8 to 10. They have the same measurement, which I think, well, I've got it in my notes. Yes, it's 4.216. I count on my fingers, so I had to use a calculator, old-fashioned handheld calculator. And I measured them, and it was an odd measurement. And so I doped out through my little calculator that the relationship, the measurement is 4.216 for the paper in kujira and 4.216 of kane for the handle. Do you believe that? They must, fan makers must know this, unless they just know that it's 28 centimeters, but isn't that absolutely remarkable? Moving on while I gasp for breath, maybe a sip of water. Good, now we're in the machiai, and here is the sort of the hint of what the theme of the day is. Well, it isn't at all, in a way, except we did have a huge snow here in Boston. Outside my apartment, we have had well over a foot of snow. The shikishi was a gift from the artist. I showed one of his works before, Chrysanthemums in the Grasses. And this is Sparrows on a Snowy Branch of Bamboo, which is a very, very familiar motif certainly in Chinese art, but in Japanese art as well. Sparrows, there are many different kinds of sparrows, and Asian and Chinese sparrows are different. They have rather pretty songs. If you know a lot about bird songs, it's quite pretty. And excuse me while I check my note, Ding Huibo, I knew him by both names. To Keihaku was his Japanese reading of his name, but his Chinese name is become quite celebrated. He's my age, and he's quite active in the Sichuan area, but known in many galleries around. Deng Huibo. Mao Zedong, Dong, that same Deng family name. Very sweet man. And the calligraphy is sit, do away with, great hero mountain. But this is a earlier and more familiar in China expression that in Japan, the more familiar in Japan is Dokuza Dayu Ho, alone sits the great hero peak. But this is a little bit different. Sit is the first character, the upper right, and then, yes, let me get further on to my, I hope you're enjoying the study guide, because we have put a lot of effort into it. I know, well, of course you should be putting a lot of effort into it. This is what you're doing, but this is beyond the call of duty. Judgment, sit in judgment, the great hero mountain. Are you the mountain? There is Dayu Ho, but Dayu is also another name for the Buddha, the great hero, the great male, in fact, mountain. So are you the mountain? Are you in judgment? It sounds like I've gotten on a soapbox. I don't mean that. The hiire and the tobacco bone, we can move on to that. The hiire is in the Chinese style, when I was working at Park Burnett Auction House in New York City and California, Los Angeles, Hollywood, I knew this ware primarily through Chinese, but it's called in French famille jaune, the family that's yellow, mostly yellow background. And so Tanya, if we could move on to the hiide. And it's got that purplish is a peony, and this design is called Botan Karaksa, peony arabesque. And the inside, we know this is a hiide because it's unglazed on the inside. That's why I have this sort of exposed here so that you can see it. Evidently, if it's glazed, there's a likelihood that it something in expansion and contraction, I don't know. But all things, containers that are ceramic are unlined. And usually that's covered up with ash. But Botan Karaksa, that is a very, very familiar motif. It's often seen in fabrics on hanging scrolls. And Botan is not so much for the flower, but the flower is a prettier design than the root. You can imagine if this was covered with rather strange looking roots, it might be not quite as pretty. But the root of the tree peony is a great medicine and is to this day. There are acres and acres and acres of these absolutely gorgeous peonies that are being grown for their roots. I'm sure the flowers also attract attention at flower shops. So moving on to a comparison of the hiide on the right and a kouro on the left. There's a story of Riku and someone else, and they're looking at a hiide, and the other says, "Oh, that's really beautiful. That would make a really nice kouro." And Riku said, "It's a very fine hiide. It would be an ordinary kouro." So know its place. So interesting. This red dust, ash, I don't think it's ash. I think it's brick dust. When I bought it, I was getting all the right stuff, so to speak. And there on the package, it said, hiide hai. Well, it's hiide hai is, according to the books, is made out of caltrop seeds. And they are bizarre beyond belief. They look like the thorny head of an ox. Really bizarre. And they're often translated as water chestnuts, but they are not the water chestnuts you're going to get in a Chinese restaurant. Different. And so from these shells, they make this ash. Well, this doesn't act like ash. I don't know what it is other than it may be brick dust. And it doesn't hold its shape. But be that as it may, I have seen pictures of Hishibai is what it's called. Hishi is caltrop, funny words. And it's sort of that color, but more on the, what's the latest rage herb? Turmeric, which a lot of people insist is turmeric, but it's turmeric. And it's related to ginger. And the ash is more that color. Whereas the ash that's in the kouro, I've yet to find out what that is. It's probably related to Fujibai, wisteria ash, which is bone white, and we rather like it. This is made so that the burning charcoal is hidden in the kouro because you don't want to have the charcoal exposed, but you put a little mica plate. We saw that the last time, little mica plate on top, and then put the fragrant and costly wood fragment on the mica plate. But because you want to light your tobacco, you want the charcoal, the burning charcoal exposed. so that you can light your tobacco. I have it right here. Now let me see if it's going. Well, barely. If it were ash, this is what has given me the question about whether it's ash or not. If that red stuff were ash, it would actually support the fire, but it's barely going. It's been on there, for a while now. So, well, let's get out of the ash and go into the Tsukubai area. And I have monkeys forming a chain. And I have several friends who are monkeys. 3 monkeys. It could be any length. I just happen to have 3 monkeys and it holds up the lantern. And they look like gibbons, very famous motif in Buddhism. And often the monkey is trying to grasp the moon that is reflected in the water, kind of like what we do in more psychological terms. But that's in the Tsukubai. So moving on into the tea room, here's sort of a general view of the tea room with take, the bamboo daisu, and with the tea utensils displayed, and the tokonoma and the hanging kama. The hanging kama at Urasenke is usually displayed and used in March, in the 3rd month. I'm not sure why, but we'll look into that a little bit later. So let's go to the tokonoma and look at it. The main event is Hōunsai's writing of Sanshoku Shoujo Shin, mountain form or color. Usually people understand Sanshoku as being color, mountain color. Shoujo Shin is pure body. This was given to me by Hōunsai when he made me a tea master. Other people can make you a tea master. You ought not to, even if you have a title, and gave me the name Sōsei, which is the first character of Shoujo Shin. The character for pure can be pronounced or read in several different ways. Mine is sei, this one is Shoujo Shin. Mountain form, pure body. That is the Buddha. The Buddha is the mountain. We saw that in the great hero mountain earlier. So this is one of the 32 physical characteristics or aspects of the Buddha. And it has a companion piece, which is, I have to look it up because it is fugitive in my brain. Keisei Kocho Zetsu. Valley, voice, wide, long tongue. So these are companion expressions. And that's the reason I have a boat, because the boat would be in the stream and the stream would be making noise. So that noise in the valley, the river gurgling or babbling or bubbling, whatever it might do, is from the long, wide tongue of the Buddha, his law. And we'll go into these a little bit more in a bit, but there is a chestnut, kogo, and a feather from an artist, a Native American artist in Oklahoma who made that feather, and we will take a look at that in a moment. So let's do a little bit more study with the hanging scroll, the kakemono, again done by Hōunsai. That is, at the far left is his signature. It's a rather stylized form of shitsu, room. Beautiful futai. This is a major hanging scroll. It is gyo no gyo, but absolutely as good as it gets. And one of its motifs is the fabric of the ichimonji. It is a little bit, when you get it at home, you can blow up enlarge the image so you can see it more clearly, but it's dew on grass, dew. My dear friend Paul Nagana would want me to say dew as in New York and Fig Newtons, but yes, dew on the grasses. Fleeting life, just here for a moment. Quite extraordinary. And the chumoashi, the sort of blue and beige fabric, that one of the great design elements is present in the pattern of fabrics more than, oh, I want to have a maple leaf on my tea bowl. That comes later. That comes later. Very soon, but later. So this is plum. I said it's actually a kind of apricot, ume, and it's on a wave pattern. These emblems of spring, ume no hana is an emblem of spring. So one might say it's seasonal, but in fabrics, that's not quite so obvious. Ume blooms in the coldest time of the year, early February, and it has a gorgeous fragrance. The flowers come out before the leaves. Cherries do that to some degree. Some varieties, the leaves come out and then the cherries come out, and those are the ones we eat because they have a nice, wonderful flavor. Yeah, you please understand that each one of these images has so much more to talk about, but I've got a lot to share. So the notes are a little more informative. So moving on to the floating boat, the hanaire on a chain, and this is the Eternal Tsubaki. Tsubaki is another emblem of spring. It blooms in very cold weather. It starts blooming early November, and it lasts, keeps blooming until late April, and some places even into May. Kyoto is sort of the center of concept. If it's happening in Kyoto, that's the way it's happening around the world. Up in Hokkaido, meaning Japan, up in Hokkaido, things are much, much later, and down in Okinawa, things are much, much earlier. But Tsubaki is related to tea. But the boat, not a hanaire. I have it rigged up with a silver necklace that I used to wear until it got adopted by the boat. And so it's sort of held up there by science. And it would be in my apartment, in my Tokonoma, I don't have a hole in the ceiling for the hook. So it's latched on to the bamboo pole that defines the room of my Tokonoma. But there's a screw-in hook. There's a more traditional one of clamps and various devices to hold it into your ceiling. But although I've been here over 20 years, I've not had the courage to drill a hole in my concrete ceiling. But that's the hook, and would be the hana hiru kugi, the flower leech hook. Hiru kugi, leech. Well, it looks a little like a leech. But I think it's related to, well, the other hook, which is the one that supports the kama over the row. That's the hirukugi. This is the hana hirukugi, so it's smaller. I wonder what their relationship is in terms of dimensions, dimension. But here, hirukugi, leech, the firstborn child, human child, of Izanami and Izanagi, the primal couple of Japan. They're the mother and father of the sun and the moon, so they're pretty primal. And their baby boy even until the age of 3, could not stand up. So he was called the leech child, Hiruko. So Izanami and Izanagi thought, well, let's leave him to heaven. And they put him in a camphor wood boat and set him off on the river of heaven, which is the Milky Way, our Milky Way. Well, the ceiling of a Japanese place is the Tenjo, the heaven well. So I kind of think this is in remembrance of Hiruko, which turns out to be Ebisu. Hiruko becomes known as Ebisu, the protector and guardian god of fishermen and other commerce. Long story, but really important to me. The boat, absolutely gorgeous, very, very much in the style of Kiyomizu, that blue and greenish and gold, very Ninsei, and it's got Ninsei's name on the bottom. Now, Ninsei is a artist of which we know very little, but he's early 17th century, and he's the one who brings design and motifs to things and in general, art in general. And Ninsei worked in Kyoto. He started out in Tamba making tea jars and eventually moved to Kyoto. But the motifs are shiba. These are brushwood that they've gathered in the mountains and they've put them in a boat, and the boat would be called a shiba bune, a boat carrying brushwood from the hills down to the city. Absolutely beautiful work. And the kogo is a chestnut, again from Tamba. This is Tambayaki. Looks like the flaming jewel, the hoju. And so I've put it on a kobuksa that is an 18th century design from next door, Omote Senke. This is the 7th generation master of the house of Omote Senke. And it is, the tension mounts, it is called the Nyoshin Tama Kinnan. Exceedingly popular at Omote Senke, and it comes in many colors. This was my first kobuksa. I had no idea that it was related to our neighbor, but if they love it, I can love it too. And the feather, the haboki, this is not really a haboki, but it is in my house. And I was doing some lecturing and talking about tea in Texas. And one of the gentlemen there, one of the clerical types, gave me this feather, and I said, oh, this can be an eagle's feather? Well, it's turkey. And Tanya, our librarian, and doing many, many other things as well, said, well, you know, eagles do molt, and one can, so they're made to be turkey feathers. But it's quite beautiful. I'm a little hesitant about the arrowhead in the tea room, but we can deal with that for a short time. I thought it was quite wonderful. Feathers. Haboki, the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and the void. Wind is a pretty difficult thing to enact, but the feather does it. And now moving on to the tana, the daisu, the take daisu. And I'm sure there are some of you, hopefully there are some of you thinking, what is that mizusashi? And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And there's Rikyu watching over everything. And the take daisu. This is Rikyu's choice. His teacher, Takenojo, had a larger daisu, the size of the larger shin daisu. We saw that the last time. But the take daisu. And we can have a matching set, or we can have the things we like on it. And these are things I like. The hanging kettle is Riku's choice. And it's a dragon. It's a dragon in clouds. This is called the Undu Gama, cloud dragon. Dragons are fish, river, waterfall, swim up strong, up the waterfall, gets to the pond above, and is transformed into a dragon. Sometimes you'll see decorative elements of a fish with a dragon head, and that shows the transformation from the fish of the world to the dragon of enlightenment. And the clouds look rather like brains, to be rather sort of clinical about the whole thing. And then there are demon masks, which are called demons, but I'm pretty sure they're one of the 9 sons of the Dragon King. So dragons again. Dragons of enlightenment. Dragons bring rain, thunder, and lightning. Rain, dragons, clouds. Yes. And it's suspended over the fire, the roe, with what is called a tsuru. And the tsuru looks like a bow, but the tsuru means the string that you pull to thrust the arrow into the air. But that's the string. I think somewhere along the line it got a little confused, but the form looks like the outline of a three-branch pine. It may not be, but these are large con. They look weather-beaten. Probably once upon a time they were meant to be shiny, but now they're made dark. And so the chain for it, the kusari, and you see the sort of 3-lobed thing that's holding the hook, get the hook, is that same shape. And that's pine, matsu, which shows that it has long life. You can see right under the pine, it looks like a nail. Yeah, sort of like a nail. That's what's holding the whole thing up. And it actually kind of gives me a little bit of the willies. No offense to Bill Thrasher, but it kind of gives me the willies a little bit. That the whole thing may come crashing down, but it's got a pine motif, so maybe it'll hold up. And then that's the hook, the hiru, and it would go into your ceiling. This would be a wood drop ceiling, not concrete floor like mine. But that is the hirukugi. We saw its little other in the Tokonoma. And charcoal. This is the wado. Sounds like a song clue. This is a wado for roe. This is one of the pieces of charcoal that you put into the rebuilding of the charcoal fire. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It's 1.8 sun kujira jaku in diameter and in height. 1.8 sun kujira. I'm not, you've heard me say this before. Edezumi would join them, and we have edezumi for furo and edezumi for ro, and I think they're pine needles. And they're white, meaning that they're dead. And they're joined together, which means it's the end of infinity, which seems to be an oxymoron, if that's the right word. Try not to be precious. Moving on to the tana again. A daisu is a tana. Remember, tana means shelf. And the mizusashi, yes, it is a mizusashi. It is 6 by 6 by 6. It's a cube. I designed it and helped a little bit Stephen Murphy make it into a stunning mizusashi. The design motifs on it come from the Genji incense comparison ritual. Let's call it what it is. And you listen to 5 different kinds of incense that may or may not be the same incense because they use 5 different incense woods and make little packets of 5 little packets of the same wood, fragrant wood, and 5 packets of another kind and another kind and another kind. You end up with 25 packets. And then you take only 5 of those and listen to them one by one, and you mark on your score paper. The first one, looking at the front design, the design on the shomen, that is 1 fragrance. It's a line. And then you listen to the second fragrance, well, and then you listen to the third fragrance, the one in the middle, and oh, that's like this one I just listened to. So you join them together with that little bridge. And then the third one, oh, that's different again. And then the last one on the left there, oh, that's just like the one I just listened to. So you join those 2 together. And that motif, 3 different kinds of incense, 2 and 2. Well, each of these combinations are given titles of the different chapters of the Genji Monogatari. And this design is related to Matsukaze, the chapter of Matsukaze. So that's, this goes on and on and on and on. And I have 6 different Genji ko no zu. Zu is a design motif. I'm very proud of this work. I think it's one of my good things. And Stephen did a couple of variations on it, and this is one of them. I'm very, very proud of it and very happy that Stephen worked with me to create it. The usuki, moving on to the usuki, is Gengen Sai's Akebono Natsume, and it's dawn. Akebono means dawn. And it was created by Gengen Sai for his son. And his son was Ichijo, one likeness, suchness. And it's omedetai, it's very auspicious. It has 2 pine trees on it, not 1, but 2. A crane on top, there's a tortoise hiding out somewhere, and then some very abstract sasa or bamboo and ume, just a couple of dots. And everyone loves this Akebono Natsume, and so countless lacquer artists are copying it. The scene is Takasago, and I had forgotten that Takasago, which usually has uba and jo, we had an incense container in the shape of a booty from the New Year's game, and uba and jo, the happily married couple. Well, these are the 2 trees, rather sort of precursors to uba and jo. Auspicious, just so wonderfully auspicious. However, tragedy struck, and Gengen Sai's son at the age of 17 died. So this has joyous and really tragic that somebody so young, and also the heir to the house of Urasenke. Just a glimpse of the mizusashi, and you can see that On the right side toward the guest, there's a corner missing. Well, that's intentional. The top has the same part of the corner missing because those chapter designs have that particular area absent. You can see that the one in the middle was all by itself. They're very clever designs, old, quite old, not as old as one might think, but the designs are borrowed from incense clocks that were in temples primarily. A trail of crumbled incense is laid in pattern, a contiguous pattern, so that you would start it at one end and it would burn and then turn the corner. Imagine that one in the front, the Atsukaze design, that's actually a continuous design, that they would be joined at the bottom and then joined at the bottom so that it would continuously burn, and they were timed. It took such a period of time to burn to a certain corner, so to speak, and then continue on. So that's why these are in this broad stroke, because they come from incense clocks. When you get the study guide, there are lots of information about all 6 sides, yes, even the bottom, which is hahaki, the broom tree, which when you get up close, disappears. Let's take a look at the Shakutate. Everybody has one of these, more or less, and maybe it's red and maybe it's a little different, but this Shakutate, the ladle stand, has tsubo designs on it. Little holes or bubbles, but actually they are borrowed designs from the Denbo, the earth treasure from Fushimi Inari Shrine. Sotan had a Denbo, a rice field treasure jar, water jar for his shrine. And the top is off. This looks, we've seen it before. It's like a teardrop. It's a water vessel that has a pointed top, and it looks like a child's spinning top. And that's the mon of Iamoto, of the Sen families. So in the design, let's move on to the design. I think it'll be a little bit clearer. Right, the one on the left, far left, these are the tsubos, the 3 tsubos. And Sotan had them designed to represent his 3 sons, my 3 sons, that began separate schools of tea. And the one on the left is Omote Senkei. The one in the middle is Ura Senkei, and the one on the right is Mushano Koji Senkei. And this is the Monyō, the family crest for each of the Sen families. There's no lid because the Iamoto of each of the schools wears the top. Interesting wordplay there on top, the spinning top, and the top of the Mizutama, the water jar. Quite wonderful. So the design on this Shakutate, we need not go back, but the design on the Shakutate is 2 of them are close together, and then there are 3 loose ones, or meaning by themselves. And I think that those represent the 3 Sen families, and you can put it together however you like. I think I only recently learned this. I knew they were tsubo, but I was counting them and measuring them and doing things like that. And realized, at least in my mind, that the Shakutate is sort of an emblem of the 3 Sen families. The tsubos have been made into little ceramic cups, and they are presented at the New Year with daikon and ninjin in namasu, a vinegared dish. These are tiny, sake cup size, charming little cups. And they have zodiac signs on them. Far left is rat, middle is ushi, and the sort of slightly distant one is tora. There are some toras out there, tigers. Moving on to the Hisaku and the Hibashi. We've seen these before. They relate to each other, 8 to 10. You have to figure that out on your own. But the reason I have them is moving on to the next one, which is a little clearer, is this is Hohensai's design of Shichi-go-san. If you look really very closely, there are 7 Shichi-go-san, 7, 5, 3. There are 7 scores near the ginnan, and the ginnan are ginkgo nuts, and they're an emblem of Sotan. Sotan had a giant ginkgo tree, and Urasenke cannot eat ginkgo nuts until after November 19th, which is when Sotan's memory is remembered. Ginkgo nuts, they are plentiful by November 19th. There's a wonderful sweet ginnan mochi. That's the first time that we, after, at Sotanki, which was held at Urasenke on November 19th, a month ago, that they serve ginnan mochi as the main sweet to remember Sotan. Then a little bit more to the right, so the middle of the picture are 5 scores, and then a little further to the right are 3 scores. So there are 753. 753, Shichigo-san is the name of a festival that celebrates children of those ages. A glimpse of the Gotoku. There is so much controversy on this, and I'm glad, but I was with Hohensai doing tea, and I was the one that put out the futaoki, the Gotoku futaoki for the hanging kettle. And 1 foot forward, like Riku's poem, 1 foot forward. So, but the Gotoku itself is an emblem of, well, we see it especially on indigo-dyed comforters, futon. People who can't afford chadogu, it can be expensive, that they have designs of it on their futon, including the Gotoku. My dear friend Keiko Thayer made a mask out of blue and white fabric, including a Gotoku and a piece of charcoal. I wouldn't think of putting it on my face. It's too much of a treasure. Moving on to the Gotoku, sorry, the Kensui. And the Kensui, the standard Kensui is on the left, and on the right is a brass offering container, which in India, they are there by the billions. They are offerings. You would put some mango leaves decoratively in them, and a coconut on top and tie a red string around it. What it has to do with falconry, I don't know. But the offering vessel, the brass one, the very brassy one, that is called a Kalash. And there is a town, mountain village called Kalasha. And when I was looking at it, Prince Harry and, was it Harry or was it Charles? Oh, the Queen is going to be very unhappy with me. Yes, I believe it was Charles and Diana who were at that village. So one never knows who they're going to run into. Moving on to the chaide. This would be the chaide. It is a spear sheath, yari no saya. And the motif, the reason that I have this jar, the chaire, is because of the shifuku. And it puzzled me for years why it is called Futari Shizuka Kinnan. And Futari Shizuka is the name of a no play, and it features two actors, one portraying a woman who becomes possessed by the spirit of Shizuka, and the spirit of Shizuka appears, and they wear the same jacket. Well, it was said that this material, this pattern, the Futari Shizuka, too quiet, the character's name is Shizuka, quiet, and the design is made up of two phoenixes, Asian phoenixes. They don't burn up and revive from the ashes. These are different. And they're male and female. Well, you know, one might think, well, those are the two Shizukas. No. It turns out that Ashikaga Yoshimasa portrayed one of the characters of Shizuka in a play, and he wore a jacket that was this material. It hasn't been copied. I've looked for it everywhere, and only recently did I find out that Yoshimasa wore a jacket. And the real color, not pink, is purple. I didn't know that. Moving on to a really provocative two pictures. On the right is a mani wheel. It's handheld and you can twirl it around. It's got prayers inside and they get uttered again and again and again and again as it spins around. That's a conch shell at the end there as a weight to help it go around and around in a clockwise motion. Because Sanskrit, that's Sanskrit decoration on the sphere, and the top and the bottom are joined together, and it's sort of sealed with that Sanskrit band around it. Well, if we look at the chaire on the left, see there's a line around the middle? This is meant to be a Chinese, a karamono, a foreign object. And why does it have that line around the middle? Well, I think it's the same thing. I think that the koicha holds the relics of the Buddha. And we purify it by turning it clockwise, because that's the way you read Sanskrit. The reliquary of the Buddha's relics has Sanskrit written on it. And it has a top and a bottom. It's made out of stone. I want to say alabaster, but I think that may be wrong. So many years ago, somebody said, oh, that's because the Chinese don't know how to make pots. So they make the top and the bottom and put them together. If anybody can make anything out of ceramic, it's the Chinese. So but it turns out that it's meant to be the seam or the join between the top and the bottom. You can worry about that later. But look at that, look at the heishi buta, the little finial on top of the lid. Well, look at what's on top of the mani wheel. And that seashell, that's a conch. When they blow the conch, it's just not an instrument of music. So moving on to the chashaku, has a willow. This is meant, I think, really for New Year's. And we hang a willow in the corner, and willow is one of the great medicines of the East. I think probably some wise medicine providers here, like Whole Foods, probably has willow bark something or other. And a green fuchsia. The green fuchsia is one of the emblems of Urasenke Midori Kai graduates, the green fuchsia. Moving on to the tea bowl, Matsukaze. This is a raku chawan with the characters for Matsukaze. The pine wind, the sound that the water makes when you know that it is ready to make tea. This is the calligraphy of the abbot of one of the sub-temples of Daitokuji. Moving on, this is even more provocative. That's a chasen on the right, in case you've forgotten. And the true chasen has a white string around it. The picture on the left is Mount Mandara, a neighbor of Mount Sumeru, probably even Mount Sumeru itself. And the devas are on the left and the asheras are on the right. And the gray water there is actually the ocean of milk, the Milky Way. And they wanted Amrit or Amrita. And they tied the snake around it, Vasuki, the snake Vasuki, who's the guardian of the Buddha. They wrapped him around 3 times. He volunteered, by the way. Wrapped him around 3 times, and they began a sort of tug of war, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, stirring up the ocean of milk, the milk ocean, and all sorts of things came up, including a poisonous gas that Vishnu, who's sitting up on top, sorry, not Vishnu, Shiva. If you look closely, you'll see there's a turtle underwater. That's a god who held up the end of the mountain, started to sink in the water and held it up. And so they stirred, twisting it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And this hala, this poison came up, and Shiva knew it was poison, and so he drank it. And his wife, knowing that it was poison, began to choke him so it wouldn't go down into his body. And his throat turned blue. That is why Shiva is blue. And then Amrit came out, or sometimes known as Soma. That white elephant, we're having a sale on white elephants, that's Arivata. And he is one of the causes of the impregnation of Queen Maya to give birth to the baby Buddha. Well, if you twist your chasen, when you examine it, chasen toshi, you raise it up, you put it down, you raise it up, and you're turning it at the same time. I think, well, you can imagine what I think. We have water in the bowl. We turn the chasen. Oh, the thread goes around 3 times. The white thread goes around 3 times. And you chasen toshi, and then you throw that water away. Is it poison? Eventually you make tea, and that's our Amrit. A more elaborate picture of the stirring. This you have to pour over for a long time. That's Vishnu on top, making, well, he oversaw the whole thing. Dwell on that. So our futaoki, I was in Kyoto and having lunch with Mori sensei. And we had sazai as sashimi. And this was the shell, the sazai shell. The sazai shell is one of the things that Rikyu used to support the lid of the kama. And it happens that this fits the bill. This is what he wanted, not a bronze copy of it, nor a ceramic copy of it. But this is more than just lunch. This has memories of Mori sensei and our life together. She was my first teacher. So it's a shell, yes, but it's also a conch, a kind of conch. And that's important symbol, one of the great symbols of Buddhism. Right. I found this out just the other day, the location of the futaoki. Well, you know, it's 3 spaces out and about 3 spaces over. Well, it turns out it's a 1.8 sun kujira to the front edge, and also from the inner edge of the top surface of the robuchi. Isun hachibu kujira. Do you believe that? Moving on, our tray, one of the great, great symbols. It's a little bit hard to read, but it is Paulonia, one of the symbols of the imperial family and also the Ashikaga and the Tokugawas. Very important sweets tray. And now we'll quickly go through some tea bowls. Absolutely beautiful. This is not the front. It is from where you drink, the opposite of it. But I wanted to show that the design is on the inside. I like so much when designs go into the tea bowl as well, rather than just on the outside. Absolutely beautiful bowl. And moving on to rabbit, the rabbit, this is a bowl that was made for the, I want to say the 600th anniversary of the founding of Kosanji. I always thought it was Kozanji, but on their website, it's Kosanji. And that's where tea was planted by Monyō for, with tea seeds brought back by Eisai from China. And this rabbit hair is from the marvelous scroll of animals acting out human goodness and silliness. The next bowl is a Ninsei inspired piece. This bowl was inspired by a bowl made by Ninsei. We know that bowl. It was in my high school art history, Helen Gardner's Art Through the Ages. And this bowl, Ninsei's bowl, was an illustration. I fell in love with it, and I don't know how. And then years, decades later, this appeared on eBay. I got it. The next is, well, I mean, the crescent moon. These motifs are so obvious that they really almost don't need explanation. But the next bowl, I think this is inspired by Mei ni Aoba Yama Hototoge's Hatsugatsuo, signs of early summer. Green leaves, Aoba, green maple leaves, Yama, mountain, Hototogi's cuckoo. This is not a cuckoo, this is a sparrow, or it looks like a sparrow. Hatsugatsuo, the first bonito of the year. So something for your eye, something for your ear, Hototogis, and something for your mouth, something to eat, Hatsugatsuo. And then a marvelous bowl, gold, lots of gold. This pattern is Seikai Ha, blue water wave, blue sea wave. It's got 5 arches, if you count carefully. And it has floral decorations, roundels, of for the 4 seasons. And this one, no, it's not iris, it's ran, orchids, little wild orchids for summer. And then just for a little bit of a comparison, that's that Bunnin Karamono Chaide, made in Japan, thank you. A Tenmoku bowl, made in Japan. A Natsume, made in Japan. Isun Hachibu, each one of them. Each Isun Hachibu Kujira. And then a discussion of motifs cannot be left without showing Takarazukushi, the treasure. These are all in Buddhism. I learned a couple of them. I thought that they were one thing, and it turns out that they're another. There's 2 umbrellas, one second down and second over. That's the umbrella over a notable person like the Buddha. And one that's actually a little bit difficult to read is the far right column, the third square down. That's a Mino, a straw rain hat. Not Mino, a rain hat, kasa, made out of straw, different umbrella, but all treasures. See the ones that are pointed? Let me see. Yeah, there's a, well, they make an X, a blue X. There's actually one. It's right in the middle. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 down. Yeah, right there. Those are cloves, the spice, cloves. Cloves were so rare and so exotic that they became one of the treasures of Buddhism. Choji, because they look like the letter T. And then Mizutsugi, the spiral, the Uzumaki mon. This mon, this crest, is one of the family crests worn by the women of the Sen family because it mimics or sort of is like the spinning of the top worn by Iamoto. Katakuchi Mizutsugi, side mouth. It's appropriate for you replenishing the mizusashi with the take daisen. And then just very quickly, some sake cups. You need both hands to drink from these sake cups. They come right out of Shinto. And the host pours, which is the higher position, and the guest holds the cup with both hands and then drinks the whole thing. No sipping and putting it down. Drink the whole thing. That's why it's small. But the motif on it is Kiku, Giri, Makie. Kiku, chrysanthemum, Giri, Paulonia. They're imperial emblems. And it's a little challenging to see, but there is a Paulonia crest on the sake bottle, sake pourer. You know that it's a sake pourer because the mouth end is a V and it's open. Tea pourers have, they're closed in on the lid, on the spout. And snow, there's a snow motif on the choshi, the pourer, or the kannabe as it's called in tea. There's a snow motif there. It's the handle. That is the edge of a snowflake. Isn't that absolutely marvelous? Snowflake made out of steel. And then quickly, some sake bottles. Tokuri, by the way, is toko. When you pour, it goes tok, 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 tok. And that's the origin of tokusui, tokusui. Chasen dokuri, absolutely charming. A whisk holding sake. There's a very famous Chinese writing called Shu Cha Rong, which lists the benefits of sake and tea together. And then sake, an old sakura tree with probably a hiyodori. You can look that up. And then lastly, some little cups. When the guests are left alone, sake is provided them in those tokuri and sake cups, and you can pour your own sake. And your neighbor as well, your fellow guest. And there's a story to each one of these. The one with the spiral, that got broken by the mistress of the house. And I said, oh, may I have that, please? And I glued it together and drank sake from it. But yes, yes. I think we can touch briefly on the Mizutsugi. We saw this last time as the preview of this time. And I think that these Tokugawa crests of the three aoi, not hollyhock, but aoi is wild ginger. Those are the leaves of the wild ginger. And three of them are the mon of the Tokugawa family. But the relationship, those circles look a lot like something to do with the Tsubo-Tsubo mon relationship of the Sen families. I believe the Tokugawa family is more closely identified with Omote Senke, but I'm not sure. And then absolutely our last slide for our series is Ho'un-gire, which is phoenix cloud. And this is the fabric that is the konomi, the choice of Ho'unsai. It is his emblem of the phoenix in the cloud, Ho'un. And now I think it's time for questions and tea. So I'm going to go into the tea room and turn the camera toward me and begin to make tea. So yes. So yes. I think that might be a tad better.
And maybe
Okay.
you could tilt down a tad bit, but I think it's okay either way. Great. And everybody, if you'd like to join in on video while we have tea, you're more than welcome.
So if there are any questions, Anthony.
Yes. I think one thing that would be good, we were asked for a reminder of the significance of the ratio 10:8 that you often talk about. Yeah, and how it's related to our practice. And the question asker asked you to go as deep as you'd like.
Yes, well, the image of the Buddha, we saw that very early on, that the image of Amida in my Butsudan, he is one shaku kujira tall. This is not coincidence. And from the three paths, the lines in his neck, down is one shaku kane. So kane is 8/10 the length of kujira. And if you write the kanji 10 and 8, that's life. That 8/10 is also yata, which is a word of unity, of life. The 8-span mirror, the mirror of Amaterasu Mikami, that's 8-span, 8/10. It's 8/10 of this part. It's in the Futaoki, not necessarily this one, but Rikyu's Isun Hachibu, 1 Sun 8 Bu, or Ju Hachibu. can't escape it. 8 and 1, 10 is actually 1, is 9. I know some of you are wondering what, how, where, what. And in our Shin presentation, we move the Shakutate forward. Now we'll see if this works. Mori Sensei, help me out here. And now the even bigger test. Everyone seems to have a problem with that. If the chakin is there, that little loop and foot is back. It's getting it back to its original place that is a little bit of a challenge.
And Sensei, we had another question about the different nodes on the takedaisu.
Yes. Well, if they know, I think that things, oh, does this look now a little bit different, that we've seen mandara being churned in the milk ocean? My takedaisu was a display model in the window of a utensil store on Gojo. And they were having a big sale, and it had been in the window, and therefore it had aged somewhat. And so it happened that the take posts, the bamboo posts, were in incorrectly. So it should be 2, 3, 2, 3, but it isn't. 2, 3, 2, 3. Mine is 3, 2, 3, 2. It should be the other way according to the traditions. But I think when somebody made something, they made it, they may have had very specific things in mind, and then it got copied. We have to do it exactly that way. And I've seen diagrams of the takedaisu, and they're intricate measurements between each of the nodes. And I guess if you have enough energy and effort to pay attention to that and want it, fine. I'm not sure.
Sensei, I have to say I really love this mizusashi, but maybe it has a little bit more meaning for me after we spent time with the I don't know what to call him, maybe president or of Shoeido, who also has one of these mizusashis, and had tea with him. So that at first I really loved the mizusashi, and then that just gave him even more meaning and connection to this mizusashi.
Yes, I have a great indebtedness to so many people in Japan, and one of them is Hata Sensei, Masataka Hata. He is the president of Shoeido, and he has come to Boston very often and helped us to understand the appreciation of incense. And the Genji incense comparison ceremony intrigued me greatly. I knew about the designs from when I was a student in college, but I never knew that there would come the day that I actually would play it. Failed miserably in it. That's irrelevant. So I think I will come here, and if others are joining in, or maybe not, but I'll join you. Let me get a big picture here.
And I'll put it on gallery view.
Goshobani tashimasu.
Yeah, and Sensei, you mentioned about the white cord around the chasen.
Yes.
Did you say it was the original color of the?
It may be regarded as the true chasen because when Iamoto presents tea, offers tea at a temple or a shrine, the chasen has a white string around it. 3 times. Basuki went around 3 times. I know this is, you've got to be kidding me. No. No. I don't think too many people know, or as some people might say, they don't care. I care. I care. I think this is my role I never thought about it. I told Mori Sensei after the first lesson, that was 50 years, Expo 72, 48 years ago. I can't do this. Well, I've been doing it for a while now, and I think it keeps me going. I know some of you have heard these songs before, but I think I have to do this. And beyond thanks to Anthony Crasso and Tanya Valentine, I would not be doing this. I don't know how to do this. Talk, yes, I've been known to talk. But the technical stuff, no. Well, I haven't actually tried yet. The 99% of the photographs that you've seen in the lecture, during the lecture, I took them. And I'm not a camera person at all. But Anthony, in his wisdom, gave me a cell phone. It's not a phone. I don't use it as a phone. I use it as a camera and send messages, sort of, kind of. And they need to be really praised. If any praise is going to go out, it really should be to them. And I am so thankful that they have been so kind and generous to a fault, because I think they believe in me and what I'm talking about. I don't know, maybe, well, I don't know.
We definitely do, Sensei. And thank you so much for giving Tanya and I this opportunity to share your teachings with everybody. And yeah, it means a lot to me to hear it all and have everybody else hear it all. I think I've maybe said, but when I started studying with you, I always realized that the things you talk about are a little bit different than what typically is talked about in the tea room. So it's been a great honor to be able to have the opportunity to invite so many people.
My mind has been sort of occupied for today, and yesterday was supposed to be a day of rest so that my brain would be fresh. That's sort of a joke. And it was right on why, and maybe somebody out there knows, why is the river in Ise called the Isuzugawa, 510 bells river. Isuzu, which doesn't say that either, but 50 bells. What is that all about? Well, 55, 5 fingers, 4 phalanges and a nail. The kanji for white is a fingernail of a corpse. That's the origin of the kanji for white. So that's pretty important. The demons get in under the nail. So this is not to be done in. So I'm holding 50 bells, and mitarashi, those of you, mitarashi, dango, Mitarashi dango? Yes, there we do. I see. Right. Little mochi balls on a stick.
Oh, right.
There are 4 together and 1 separate. Well, that ta is not hand, it's foot. Tabi,
Ah,
tabi. And Shimogamu Jinja in Kyoto, ancient place, long before Kyoto was there, Heian-kyo. People walk in the water holding a candle, which they leave. And afterwards they get the dango. They get 4, they don't get the 5th one. Other places have them. They sell them in groups of 5. When you go to Ise, those who've been to Ise, right, that you stop at the Isuzugawa and you take a handful of water and you sip and you spit. Used to walk in it, you would purify your feet. That's why we wear tabi, to show that our feet are clean. I know, but I think it sounds prettier when you read, the hand washing place as opposed to the foot washing place. But Shimogamu Jinja, I just saw a video of men, used to be naked, except probably for fundoshi, sitting on opposite sides of this mitarashi pool, and they've got 50 bamboo sticks around some sakaki branches. The water's calf deep. And the priest strikes a gong and they all dash in to get one of these arrows. It's not really an arrow, but sort of an arrow with a little shide on top and some money stuffed in it. Foot washing. 50 bells.
It's Yuko, right? Does foot washing signify something? Because what I know is that from Yakuza world, when you get out of their world, they usually say, I wash my foot, or I wash my feet. And so before you mentioned about the foot washing,
Right.
does that mean something just like that, to get out of this world, to go into more purified sacred world? Or
I think so. There are other faiths. The churches, Christian churches, have a lobby. And it was once upon a time when, sorry ladies, when women could not get out of the narthex. That's where they joined the church.
sorry.
Later, they were allowed up in the balconies, but no one could enter the church itself without washing their feet and being baptized. So there was a font outside where you could wash your feet. Now, narthex, when Jesus was going to be done in, a woman wipes, cleans, purifies his feet with nard, spike nard. And narthex comes from that nard. And if you look at the plan of many churches, after the basilicas, the early basilicas, they're cruciform. And Jesus's head would be probably right in the middle at the crossing, but his feet are in the narthex. You get it? Nard, feet, narthex. I was at, anyway, Hoonsai, I happened to be in front of Urasenke. I don't know how, but Hoonsai arrived in his vehicle, and they had ready for him a very small sandbox that was filled with salt. and he scrubbed the soles of his shoes. This was before he went through the mon. Family goes through the side door. The main door is for guests. So he would go through the side door, and there was this little trough, this small kitty litter filled with salt, and he scrubbed his shoes before he went into the house. So there was a time when Tantansai visited next door at Omote Senke, and he got his tabi wet in the roji. I'm sure he loved that. And so before he entered the tea room, he took off his tabi and put them in the chiriana, the dust hole that's just before you enter the tea house. There's some roji bashi sticking out, nice green ones with some good clippings. So chiriana, that's to get rid of that final dust of your brains. But he threw his tabi in. The Ashikagas were crossing the bridge at Arashiyama, and one of the pages, one of the people, accidentally dropped his fan into the water. Everybody stopped and they thought, oh, that looks so pretty. So they all threw their fans in, and that's where that motif of those senmen, I showed a tea-bowl not too long ago with that, senmen nagashi. And so Midori-kai was invited to then Waka Sosho when he became Waka Sosho, Zabosai, now Iamoto. He was becoming Waka Sosho. And we got to go, Midori-kai got to go into the garden. Sorry, I'm laughing. It isn't a funny matter, but it turns out to be funny. And some person in yofuku, Western dress, was carrying tabi. And sorry, I'm laughing, but it must be, yes, it's around 3. That's when Midori-kai in class would start the giggles. And accidentally dropped tabi into this little artificial stream that was part of the garden behind Heian Jingu. Well, they all knew the story about the fans in the water, and somebody said, I don't know who it was, well, I'm glad the Ashikagas didn't throw their tabi in the water, because we would have byobu and chawan with tabi on them. Anyway. Up a lazy river.
Well, again, thank you, Allan
See, I can't
Sensei,
stop.
and all of the guests. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gratitude.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Maybe
Thank you.
Tokoro or Sue, maybe.
Thank you.
So much fun.